station in the city of New York at the age of 16 and a half without being aggressive. I have never had to learn the word ambition, aggression, pushy, whatever you want to say.
Now,
I had nothing but horse beams.
You have the money and the glamour of being an anchor. Do you miss the excitement of going out on the street?
No, I think one winter when it was about 4 degrees and I was on the street cured me of that forever.
What about the spontaneous part of that, the fact that you would write your own copy? Now you have writers.
Yes, well, I miss that. I miss ad-libbing. I miss talking to people about what I believe in and think of. For instance, a payola is another thing. I felt so deeply against payola, so deeply on a moral level.
And you were a disc jockey at the time.
Oh yes. All my friends were getting paid. The thing was that I felt because for every record there's just so much airtime, and there was a lot less in those days. FM was no viable competitor in those days. FM is now part of the community of broadcasting, but I felt that it was just so much airtime, and if you got paid for playing a record rather than playing it for taste, you were betraying the medium, your profession, American youth, and the society you lived in.
Did anybody offer you money to play a record, Stan?
Well, I remember once an attorney friend of mine sent somebody over to see me with a thick envelope full of cash. And let me tell you, that's tempting. But I said to him, look, I can't do anything for you, I can't help you. And I sent him to the program director, who I knew was taking with both fists.
Who was that?
Well, I'd rather not go into it, but I don't want to, go with his name, but I do say that the man was a fool, because in the long run, it may sound corny, that morality does pay off. I mean, I'm still working, and everybody knew who was taking, it was an open secret. But this man was the best program director in the broadcasting business. I revered his ability as a program director, but he was greedy. And because he took, and when the payola scandal broke, there was no way he never really got back into the broadcasting business again.
Now, I'd point out that payola was legal at that time, but Stan,
sure.
did you do anything
They made laws against it afterwards.
Did you do anything about the fact that someone offered you money?
No, I didn't have anything against the man. It was a disgraceful, industry-wide open secret again. There was nothing, no, I didn't feel there was anything against him. He wanted to get a record played. Everybody wanted to get a record played. People took me out for dinner and paid for my dinner. I guess you could call that plug-ola or something. I still played or didn't play a record. But they won my favor.
You're saying that it didn't affect your judgment about whether to play the record?
No, it didn't. I felt
Were these people fools then for taking you out, unless they liked your conversation?
No, because it's nice to have a friend up there. We're in a position that can make that decision. That's all it really is.
Did you go so far as to say, look, I'm glad to go out to eat with you, but understand it's not going to affect my judgment?
Well, no, I never had to say that. They knew me. They know what you are. They know that if you believe in something, you will go all out. The only way they can get to you is to convince you that this is a good commodity. And so they, whining and dining is part of it, and I didn't mind that. I also discussed a lot of business. There's something sad in all of this. I want to tell you a real sad truth. I was a bachelor, and I thought a lot of the people who took money were grotesquely vulgar, because we made very good money in those days, and you didn't know how much you made, And later I was single, but later I've been married and have children, and I realized the pressures when you're married and when you have children are 10 times what they are when you're single. But that's when your morality, that's when your ethical code and conduct should be stronger, because you have children. But the pressures are so great that some people succumb to their greed at that time in their life, and they shouldn't. I think with politicians too. And some people succumb to racism in the 50s. I want to know something about when you were a disc jockey. What was your observation and your own experience about this question of cover records? And please explain to our audience what cover records were. A black group would come out with something, and a white group would become popular with it. They'd cover it. They'd cover the original.
Like Pat Domino would sing "Ain't That a Shame," and Pat Blue would sing "Ain't That a Shame."
Yeah.
What was your experience at WINS?
I do very well on that. My experience on WINS, we had an organization in the 40s called the Metropolitan Association of Disc Jockeys. and it became the National Association of the Disc Jockeys. It was conceived by Universal Pictures with a film called Searching in the Wind or something like that, children, who started Disc Jockey Organization. And I remember Ed Sullivan being at one of our meetings, and one of our biggest problems in those days was getting rid of the word race. It was race music and race records. Everything black was called race. It then became rhythm and blues, and then my colleague, Alan Freed, who later became my colleague, thought of the word rock and roll, and it became a white-black medium. You know, and Alan had a lot to do with the blending of
You mean
races.
mixed white and black?
I mean, mixed
Thinking
white
like
and black.
The Del Vikings, I think.
I mean, the
were one of
blacks
first
were
integrated groups.
listening to black music. I mean, even today.
Oh, you're talking about the separation.
Yes, the separation musically. Alan Freed integrated music. He's more than the father of rock and roll. He's one of the people.
He did this before he came to WINS, right?
Yes.
In
All of a sudden,
Cincinnati?
white people were getting interested in rhythm and blues. White youngsters, and they.
And he came to WINS what year?
1954, because he replaced me with a program. In fact, it's kind of funny, called Stan the Request Man, and I was doing a show called Stan the Request Man at night. Wendy Way sang my theme song, a very highly produced thing, and I had Western Union telegrams that come in and with requests. And the station came over to me one day, and they wanted to hire Freed under a new manager, and he said, "We don't like requests." So I said, "All right, I wanted to leave of absence anyway, so forget it." I came back from Europe 3 months later, and I was back at WINS, and I saw Alan. I said, "They told me you don't like requests. They don't like. You're doing requests, Alan." And he said, "You know where I got the idea for the requests? I was in Akron, Ohio. I came into New York, and I heard you on Stan the Request Man, and so I copied it." You know.
And of course, requests became a big thing in the 50s.
Yes, of course.
To Joey, who loves
Oh,
Barbara.
yes. And then, of course, the biggest one was where you said, "Oh, please don't send wires like that. I can't say that." And after being on the air for 4 hours, somebody would say it finally, "What did they say in that one telegram?" And that's the one they'd remember.
Yeah. Well, tell me about the effect that Freed had. When he came there, was there an effect on the race policy at WINS of what records to play?
No, there was no policy.
Play the
This
Boom
was
or
America.
the Domino records.
This was America, Hank. I mean, America was a racist society. I mean, musically.
And did the advent of Freed have some concrete effect at WINS?
Yes, I think it had well,
In memos?
Alan
or
was heard
unspoken
around the
reports
country,
from
you know.
program directors?
INS was a leader for all the country. It was an imitated station elsewhere. Later, when we went to Formula Rock and Roll, Alan was a force unto himself, and he helped integrate music. He did shows. He put shows on in New York, for which there was print all over the country on. It was mainly white audiences all of a sudden.
Well,
for
was
rock
there
and
a
roll.
moment that you can remember at WINS, Stan, where you wanted to play the Orioles, a black group,
No.
and they said, no, you're not allowed to,
Never.
or you knew that you wouldn't be allowed to?
I worked for a guy in California once at Los Angeles at KMPC who didn't want me to play Al Jolson because he was anti-Semitic, and he wouldn't let Lena Horne on because he didn't like blacks. He was a lovely man, and in fact, he was being brought up by Cleet Roberts, a newsman, before the FCC on charges of discrimination, and he died, and he got the FCC off the hook. A guy named G.A. Richards. I don't remember him very fondly.
Tell me about the fact of your breaking some records. In fact, controversy was involved, and you were the first person to play the first Family album. This was the satire on John Kennedy.
And I had to do a big selling job when I did it, you know. We were, in those days, it was post-payola days now, the early 60s, and we weren't allowed to pick any singles out. It was now by jury system. No disc jockey could pick his own records, which kind of
jury of who?
All the disc jockeys, the music department, the program
Well,
director.
we'll get to the first family question. I have this image of mind of something like a Supreme Court secret meeting.
No.
All these adults sitting around a conference table discussing, well, I think In the Still of the Night has the type of beat that the kids will like to dance
No, what do you
to.
think of this for the pick hit of the week, you know, or something?
Did you ever get the feeling of, we adults are sitting around talking about rock and roll?
We adults were leading and guiding our youngsters,
Okay.
and
So
many
tell
of them
me
were guiding
about
us,
the
too.
first family.
The first family, a man by the name of Earl Dowd, a great comedy writer, and Bob Booker, who used to be an announcer, came in to me one day, and I was allowed to play my own albums. And they came in when I was on noon to 3, and about 11:45 before I went on the air, Earl said to me, "I have a record we saw Von Meter, a guy on television, who imitates Kennedy, and we've thought of this album, and we'd like you to listen to it. What do you think? And I said, after listening to it, it is amazingly well done. It is an excellent taste. I think I'm a Kennedy lover. I love John Kennedy. I named my child after him. I said I couldn't possibly see of anybody, you know, worrying about this or being offended. It turns out there was a record in France at that time, kidding de Gaulle, this very stiff de Gaulle, you know. So I went on the air not only playing the record, but selling it. You know, because I was afraid of people saying, you can't needle the president. And I was showing how wonderful it was and how de Gaulle was doing it. Well, if you've ever heard of a phenomena, like in the Hollywood pictures where things happen, everything pops off, this was a natural phenomena. Only time in my life anything like this ever happened. The reaction was electrifying in every sense of that word. I got calls. Record dealers were calling. While I was on the air, people were running to record stores to buy it. We had, by the time I got off the air at 3 o'clock that afternoon, Vaughn Meader, who was in Detroit working for $250 a week, was being flied into New York. They had 40,000 copies ordered, which makes it kind of a small hit to begin with. Vaughn came on the next day with me and was offered $10,000 a week. His manager, Buddy Allen, was handling calls for $10,000 a week or something. He was an instant star. For this, I got a gold album. It's the only thing I have on the walls of my home which show what I do. I don't believe in having business in my home, but I'm very proud of this. Out of it came a long friendship with Earl Dowd, and a great success for a while for Vaughn Meader, who's had his ups and downs since then.
What did he do when Kennedy died?
We died together that night. I mean, we had dinner, and it was a very sad evening.
And specifically Vaughn Meader's career.
Well, Vaughn Meader's career was, he was trying to get out of the Kennedy imitation thing for a long time.
And, of course, the general reaction to the Kennedy... tell me about that. As a person being at a radio station, this was before WINS was all news, how did WINS cover the Kennedy assassination? Start from, I guess 1:30 was when the bulletins came across.
You'll never believe this. One of the rare times I was on tape. My show was on the air, on tape. I was at the meaningful moment of being in Brooklyn judging a beauty contest. Would you believe it? And I all of a sudden saw a girl crying. And I said, what's the problem? And she said, I just heard that the president died. I went over and I saw some people around the radio, and I saw them crying. I didn't have to know anymore. I said to the man who drove me out to Brooklyn by car, let's get back to the studio fast. And I was in a station wagon that didn't have a radio in it. I mean, I had no radio to hear this. And I was calling the people in the car across the way. When was the president? Is he dead? Was he shot? I'm yelling like a nut. Finally got into New York, and they had interrupted my show with Brad Phillips, who was a staff announcer. And Brad had done all of this. I was not there. When I came back to the studio, I then went down to the man on the street, interviewed people, had to break the news to some people. And it was,
what were some of the reactions you got?
Well, I think the biggest word is shock. You know, a president, he not only was a president, I mean, he was Camelot to a lot of people. He was the first young president in so long, and he was so young and vital and alive. And I think it was more than I have a feeling it was more than other presidents that may have had that happen.
The fact that you could cover the Kennedy assassination as a person on the street story in New York, I think, shows something that has continued today about WINS. Local coverage has been very successful for WINS. During the blackout, for example, people who had transistor radios and would be listening within the city listened to WINS overwhelmingly over the other all-news station, WCBS. But when it comes to a general rating point comparison, CBS strongly beats WINS on the average, and I'm wondering if that's because WCBS is backed up by the CBS network, whereas WINS has the Group W correspondents, and they've been falling away.
CBS also has
Group W has been closing bureaus around the world.
I think an all-news operation that's tied in with a network, be it CBS or anybody else, has a what do they say, an albatross on its back or something. It has a cross to bear because, well, you have to do the 5 or 10 minute network news that comes on every hour. You have to do that. So that's immediately ruling out all your local stories for covering the network, the common denominator that goes across the country. WINS has a very flexible, I mean, our format and schedule goes right out the window as soon as something happens. The night of the blackout, I was walking along the street, and I think I reported the first looting report on the air anywhere in New York. 2 blocks from my house on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, I saw Green's department store, 5 and 10, had a broken window, and the policeman told me it was happening elsewhere. I tried to quiet it. I didn't say it was happening elsewhere. I did say that I hope, this is for people who are listening, you know, that I hope it's an isolated incident, that I hope that the kind
Sounds
of
like editorializing.
Quality, well, I didn't know for sure, and the station didn't want to. You also, again, be careful, Hank, responsibility and editorialize. You know, like, I am never really objective. You know, I try to be fair. I mean, as a human being, you're never really objective. You try to be fair. You may have a political enemy that you'll always try to give a good break to. You know, you never try to do anything to hurt anybody. But also, there's a sense of responsibility. I mean, you don't go in on the air and say, hey, they're looting everywhere. You know, wowee. You know, it's like, okay, kids, you do it too.
Stan, was that image of responsibility one reason that WINS asked you to drop the Z from your name when you went to All News?
Well, that was kind of funny. President of our company always called me Z all through it all, but Stan was Stan Z. And they made me drop the Z, and it would be Stan Burns, and people would say, Stan Burns, you mean Stan Z Burns? You know, so it never really went.
This was so that they wouldn't know that you were the disc jockey, because now you were supposed to be the staid reporter.
Right. Now,
you've gone back
they didn't
to
like
the
the
Stan
image,
Z Burns.
they said. And then about 10 years after All News, one day I walked into our executive editor and I said, how about putting the Z back? And he went down to the president of radio, and the president went back.
And they had a disc jockey meeting
at
at
the
the
Supreme
Supreme
thing. One
Court
day he
to
went to me,
decide.
go use it on the air, and I used it on the air, and people said, what are you doing using it on the air?
What does Z stand for?
The Z stands for zero. There was years ago, there was, for nothing. Not zero like Zero Mostel, you know, zero. I mean,
Like Harry S. Truman.
Like Harry S.
stands
Truman. There was a writer, a comedy writer by the name of Stan Burns, and I have a brother who's in the menswear business who's a very promotion-minded guy. And he said to me one day, why don't you put a Z in, Stan Z? You know, it can't be confused.
Okay, sorry, we have to end now.
Oh,
Stan
okay.
Z. Burns.
Right.
People can listen to you on WINS, anchoring the first 20 minutes of every hour from noon through 5 p.m. I'm Hank Wallace, and thanks for being with us. Thanks.